afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which is titled Empower and Simplify GRC by Infusing AI. This webinar is brought to you by Express Computer in partnership with IBM. I am Mohit Rathore, Senior Correspondent with Express Computer. With artificial intelligence, as it continues to transform how businesses operate, by embedding AI into GRC processes, organizations can identify new patterns and mitigate emerging threats, while also eliminating the manual process of reviewing charts and spreadsheets. IBM OpenPages with Watson is a cognitive-driven, integrated governance, risk compliance GRC solution. It provides core services and functional expertise across operational risk, regulatory compliance, IT governance, business continuity, internal audit, third-party risk, model risk, policy, and financial controls management. Today, in this webinar, you'll learn about the best practices to better understand and visualize and govern your GRC data with AI. But before we take the session forward, I will read out some of the information about the webinar. This webinar is being broadcasted live and will be available as on demand. We will have a round of Q&A at the end of the webinar. However, I urge you to send in your questions at any time during the webinar using the questions text box. We will also have a short survey at the end of the webinar. A form will open in a web browser after the webinar ends. So I request each one of you to participate in the same. If you face any technical issues, please refresh your web browser or else reach out to our technical team using the questions text box. If you have any further questions or if you wish to interact with the speakers, please leave a comment using the questions text box. So that's all from my side now. Without taking much of your time, I would like to introduce our speakers for the day. So we have Pradeep Iyer, who is segment leader AI, IBM India and South Asia. Pradeep manages IBM Watson and AI applications in India and South Asia. With over 18 years of experience across industries, he has been instrumental in helping enterprises unlock value from data. In his present role, his focus is to identify and build AI journeys for customers that can transform volumes of data into cognitive intelligence. As a data and AI evangelist, he has helped several companies accelerate business transformation with adoption of AI. He is also a leader in developing an ecosystem of new generation hybrid cloud. He has been enabling organizations to build and manage AI applications across clouds. Then we also have with us Atul Joshi. He is Chief Technical Architect, IBM India and South Asia. Atul is a chartered accountant with strategic planning plus IT consulting experience of over 17 years. He's part of the IBM data and AI team with focus on business analytics and regulatory technology solutions. Atul has been instrumental in technically driving the IBM's business analytics value proposition. His core expertise is around envisaging the performance management-led solutions covering a broad area of strategic and financial planning, management and financial reporting, and regulatory technology, strengthened by predictive and prescriptive analytics. So with this, I hand over the floor to Atul, who will now take the session forward.
Hey, thanks, Mohit, for the detailing and a very good afternoon to all of you. We hope that you all are doing good and safe in the current times. And me and Atul have been a part of several of these series in recent time. And we're very glad that we have another opportunity to share some of the experience that Atul has garnered with his over 2 decades of working with organizations in India, South Asia. And the last few quarters have been very challenging, I know, for a lot of organizations, and our conversations with some of the risk professionals, the security officers, have been a reflection of how the times are. And a lot of them told us in the last few months, I would say that, gone are the days that we just want to document risk. We would rather want to progress from that situation to start managing risk for our organization. And our attempt at IBM has been to help customers simplify the overall governance, risk, and compliance. And what Atul is going to share in the next few minutes is some of the work that we've done in enhancing the overall experience for risk professionals, be it security, be it operational risk, be it any risk function, which happens to be the first line of defense or the second line of defense or the third line of defense within an organization, and see how we will be able to simplify the whole process of regulatory compliance. That's something which me and Atul have been experiencing in the last few months, and we're going to talk about this in the next few minutes, which I'm sure will be worth your time. So thank you so much for giving your time this afternoon. Over to you, Atul.
Hey, thanks, Pradeep. Let me start sharing my screen. So first of all, again, let me ask you the same question. We are all, worried about everybody these days. So I hope all of you are doing fine. And with that, let me start with a brief overview of the GRC solution we have today. Uh, so initially, we'll talk about some of the challenges that you face, and I'm sure you will agree with me that these are some typical challenges that every organization faces, right? And if you look at the recent times, a lot of restriction mandates changing. Suddenly you will have restriction on how many people would actually work from office. There are things happening at the supply chain level, supply chain disruptions happening. Again, you have to allow certain relaxations in policies. So all this becomes more challenging, and a lot of dynamism is also expected as far as any GRC framework is considered within the organization, right? And if we look at a typical scenario today, you would find that it's not that the GRC as a concept is not present. Probably each function within the organization follows all these methodologies. Sometimes they are siloed, sometimes they are specific to units and functions, but they are there. Now the impact of that would be it would be difficult for the top management to get a complete holistic view of where they stand in terms of those risk KPIs, or as we call risk heat maps across the organization. So if the consistency is not there, you will always have trouble mapping the overall impact of these challenges in the organization, right? Um, there is always sort of challenge with respect to the quality of GRC data as well, right? And as we know, you will not typically have a system or an ERP or a database which readily gives you a GRC data. GRC data is not something which is a transaction system churns out. It's more about collaboration of the people within the organization who understand and identify the issues, try to map that with the risk areas, the controls that need to be in place, and the risk and compliance team within the organization manages the whole picture, in terms of having the RCSA, or multiple iterations of those assessment happening as and when there are the changes, right? So these all these data silos of GRC data again becomes a challenge, right? And finally, the accountability. So when you talk about accountability, everybody sort of is responsible as his own deliverables are concerned within his functions or department. But probably sometimes we miss a view that there is an impact of lacunas, or some of those missing pieces of control in one organization or one functions, and impact of that on the other. It could also be true from the let's say a group of company perspectives, right? So maybe one of the subsidiaries not following that path would obviously have the impact on the brand name of the overall business house, right? So that also seems to be considered from the holistic point of view. And lastly, if you remember, Pradeep was giving this concept of three lines of defense, right? And what we notice these days is the technology is evolving, and now we also have the ability where you can give the users who are not really a GRC or risk professionals who can actually contribute to the process, right? So let's say somebody at a branch level or a function level can identify certain issues that are present within the processes, and he can actually collaborate that, and the right set of people can take the actionables with some sort of workflow. So these are some of the challenges and combined scenarios where you could take your entire GRC presence, the presence in terms of managing the GRC situation to the desirable level, right? Just to give a example, we've seen that there has been a lot of changes, the regulatory changes, the management asking about the compliances, but the key thing here is there are always huge fines, right? And these fines are increasing. If you see from 2017 to 2019, in 2 years itself, we've seen a huge increase in the challenge in the fines, right? So that is something every organization kind of is worried about. How do you actually mitigate those aspects from the financial impact as well, right? One more important noticeable thing is everybody is talking about leveraging the AI these days. You have huge data, not just internal but also the external data that is available to you to relate to your business KPIs. Now, why not to actually leverage these capabilities to also include and enhance your GRC presence, right? So how do you make that journey from a typical application level to something that is very smart? And we are going to talk about that in a while as well. So what we have done is, from the IBM's point of view, we have an integrated full GRC solution called IBM OpenPages. And we've actually rebranded that as IBM OpenPages with Watson. And one of the reasons for this is we have included a lot of AI capabilities from our Watson. Watson is a very well-known brand from the IBM's AI capability point of view. So wherever it's fitting to the requirement, and you will also see that in the demo, that we have included these smart capabilities within the Watson in the application itself, right? Second thing is we have made the entire application really user friendly. It's all built around different workflows that people can leverage. So it becomes actually very easy for a business user as well as somebody who is not a GRC specialist or a risk professional who is not a risk professional to actually start using the solution, and it actually helps the entire risk compliance team to get more quality out of it, right? And this is also acknowledged by some of the industry experts such as Gartner, who has ranked us higher compared to some of our competitors. We have always been in the leader segment in this space, right? Just to kind of summarize some of the things that we have seen is we have built this entire workflow where people actually can use natural language processing, right? So, for example, if you take a look at GRC as a solution, the way it works is you have various risks present across various functions and departments, right? And you have the control mechanism, right? And these control mechanisms need to be assessed frequently based on the guidelines given by the risk professional. Now, the way this can be collaborated by the different business users across the enterprise is they can actually use natural language processing. So they may not be risk expert. They can input their assumption. They can be part of the workflow. They can attach the documents. They can be part of review of those processes, and this becomes quite engaging for the business users, right? The other thing would be, how do you actually analyze the entire GRC data? So we have included our, we have included our Cognos analytics, which is not just a, we don't really call it BI and reporting application, but it's more of a smart inbuilt AI driven application that helps you analyze your GRC data. You can actually use the GRC data, explore the data, understand the different context, from the data perspective, and also do, you leverage the forecasting capabilities that is built into that. The other thing is, we also need sometimes, the data that needs to be taken, ingested into the GRC solution, right? So we have the pre-built connectors, which can take the data from your source system so that it gets used within the GRC. But we also have something like, a fast map capability where you can take a simple, CSV Excel data and use that within the solution. So both from the technical as well as business capabilities, we have these capabilities built into this, right? Now, if you look at the GRC capabilities that are present, we have really gone ahead and modularized the whole approach, right? And that becomes easy for different organizations, across the industries. For example, if you look at the nature of the industries, right? So someone like BFSI, they kind of will have a mandate to have an operational risk model. So they will always be keen on having the ORM sort of module where they calculate the risk present across the different functions. Or you could look at more of a generalistic view where you look at the entire IT risk management, right? So every organization will have some sort of IT applications, and they would like to have a risk assessment based on the external threats or the improvement, or kind of improvement expected in their current IT landscape and things like that. Or you could also have your internal audit team who can actually formulate the entire audit program. They can assign the different tasks to the auditors. They can work on the audit papers and things like that. And especially these days, you will see that lot of regulatory changes and regulatory compliance, which are the keywords. So we can actually use some of the content providers like Thomson Reuters, who can give the inputs in terms of the changes in the regulatory compliance need that can be ingested directly within the open pages as a solution, right? So whenever there are changes in these laws or mandates from regulatory authorities, you can get that feed that these are the areas that need improvement or reassessment in your organization, right? And so on and so forth. We have all these different modules available. We've seen people going with step-by-step approach. For example, they can start with one module and then they can add another module and so on and so forth, right? And all of this is enclosed with the advanced analytics. We'll be showing some of those capabilities in the demo. The ability to use easy to use workflow where more and more people can collaborate and make the GRC really robust within your organization. We've also embedded the cognitive capabilities of Watson. Again, that is something I'll show as a part of the demo as well. And as far as the source data connectivity is concerned, we have the ability to use our built-in ETL component, as well as flexible configuration to use the APIs to connect to your source system, right? So this is a kind of summary of different capabilities, different modules we have within the IBM OpenPages. Now with that, we have the first poll question coming up. So team, if I could request you to take the poll questions.
So we have our first poll question here. Which of the following GRC area your organization would like to focus on? So your options are IT governance, risk and compliance. We have second option is operational risk management. Third option, regulatory compliance management. Then we have internal audit management and others. So audience, you have about 30 seconds to send in your responses. Which of the following GRC area your organization would like to focus on? It's also a multiple choice question, so I think you can select multiple options as well. So let's wait for the audience to send in their responses. Okay, so we have the results here. 76% of the audience say IT governance, risk and compliance, whereas 46% of the audience have chosen operational risk management. 41% say regulatory compliance management, whereas 35% say internal audit management, and 4% say others. So, Atul, your thoughts on this?
Right, and this also resonates well with some of our own surveys in terms of what are the key priorities of our customers. And while today's demo we are not covering all the modules, we are primarily focusing on some of the key capabilities. But yes, I mean we've seen this need where the organization will have different governance application as far as the IT landscape is concerned. Now, one of the a challenging thing there would be that whenever there is an incident that happens with respect to any IT applications, it is difficult for the top management to do the assessment or the risk evaluation as far as the other business areas are concerned. Now with the uh, GRC solutions such as OpenPages spanning across the applications, spanning across the different business functions, it would be easy for the business users as well as the top management to get that overview. And plus we have also we have the capabilities to integrate with the third party vendors, where we can have the right set of data that would be ingested within OpenPages, so that those specific IT incidences, events can be embedded in the workflows, and these the routes can be initiated by the IT team to take the next action upon. Of course, I mean we can touch base with the with the audiences on as one-on-one in the in our interaction later on. But that was just to give you a view on the IT GRC. The other thing would be in terms of how do you actually do, let's say, something like internal audit, right? So you can have your internal audit defined, internal audit team defined in the application. You can assign the task. They can actually upload their observation audit papers, set the deadlines, and get it reviewed by the management, and so on and so forth, right? And of course similar things with respect to some of the other modules. Now one more good thing is we follow an open model kind of approach. So a lot of these objects that I talk about with respect to the risk, RCSA, noting the issues, action items, and stuff like that, mitigation, multiple reviews, and the analytics dashboard, Watson. All of these are common across various modules. There would be obviously some of the things specific to module and individual modules, but a lot of these capabilities are spread across. So with this, let me move to the next slide. And again, this is something that you will find very familiar in case you don't have any existing GRC solution. As you can see, different business units will have their own priorities, right? And they will have some sort of presence in terms of controls and checkpoints, and maybe some of the siloed application that they might use. Now, on top of this, there will be mandate from the top management and also the external authorities, which necessitates the interpretation of what happens when the regulation changes, or what happens when there has to be change in the policy. Let's say in the current scenarios when we have a lot of HR policies, getting changed, or just to make the business operational, you might need to look at the change in which some of the supply chain disruptions are happening. I gave that example. And the whole thing in terms of managing the risk and controls around that. Now one of the challenge that you sort of witness here is there is no clear mapping, right? So while these individual siloed application may have their own risk indicators, there is no unified view of the risk that is present across the organization, and that's what typically could be a challenge. So I'll give you some more details around that. So let's assume we take an example of an organization, and we have these different GRC specific applications present. Now, if you look at from the IT perspective, we have different IT assets or technology which are used for managing the business spread across the locations. You have on-premise and SaaS applications and all the risk and controls around that. If you look at the finance, you will have stringent processes and sub processes, and again the ability to capture those risk areas as far as the financial disclosure is concerned. There could be similarly the compliance for the regulatory or the internal mandate on the policies, frequent programs from the internal audit to ensure that the enough control exists within the organization. And the key thing here is the companies spread across the organization, looking at all the processes, doing the risk assessment, having the controls around that, and an iterative test plan that is happening. Now, one of the things that you notice here is there are no arrows which are flowing from one stack to another, but in reality these are all things which are connected. So things happening in one finance process will obviously have an impact on IT and so on and so forth, right? So in reality, if you see, these are all connected sort of presence that we feel. And in case there are any challenges, right? So if you observe something and then there is a need to do a reassessment or testing it again, then it percolates sort of upward. So a test result necessitates a common control that need to be present across my IT applications and my operations and compliance, impact of that on my audit reports, and how do I then reassess those risks which are impacting my processes and geographies and so on and so forth. So this is actually a complete a view of how impact at one place, an incident at one place can impact across the organization, right? So this just kind of gives you a flavor of what happens when you have a disconnected GRC approach. So with that as a context, we'll just have a quick poll question and then we'll move to a demo. So I would request the team to look at the poll question.
Okay, so we do have a second poll question here. How your organization manages GRC related challenges today? So we have our options here. We follow a manual process using spreadsheets and email. We already use a GRC tool in covering some area. Then we have a third option. We have plans to evaluate GRC solution to meet our requirements. And the last option is we are having all the processes and technology in place for our GRC requirements. So again, you have about 30 seconds to answer a question or to send in your responses. How your organization manages GRC related challenges, and yeah, these are the options that you have. I'll again repeat the question, how your organization manages GRC related challenges today. Okay, so we have our results here. So 43% of the audience say that we follow a manual process using spreadsheets and email. 22% of the audience say that we already use a GRC tool in covering some area, whereas 11% of the audience say we have plans to evaluate a GRC solution to meet our requirements, and 24% of the audience say we are already having processes and the technology in place for our GRC requirements. So Atul, I hand over to you to share your
Correct. Correct. And again, sort of resonates with, what we've been discussing so far. And I understand, I mean, there may be a manual process, but I'm sure, there are, controls in place, even if there is a manual process or, a GRC solution that is used in some areas. And it's good to see that, people are aspiring to look at, some of the other areas where they feel that the control needs to be established, or the aspiration to move from a manual system to a solution that can give you a complete GRC view across the organization. Right. So what I'll do with this is I'll just jump to a demo. Just give me a moment. Due to restrictions, sometimes on the network side, what we have done is we have created this video demo. But I'll be talking over on the things happening on the demo screens, so that it's more elaborate in terms of what is happening there, right? So we'll start with the overview. So as you can see, this is a web-based solution. We'll just look at the screens now. I'm hoping that you are able to see a web-based interface now.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can see that.
Okay, so this is a login page, and again, typically we can integrate with your single sign-on. And right now, I'm logging in as the operational risk manager. Again, this can be given to an individual business user who may not be a risk professional, but he probably wants to record some of the events or issues and collaborate in the whole GRC area. And we'll also look at some of the other capabilities, right? So let's take this example, and let's assume that this person logs in. Now, one of the things that you'll notice, after he logs in is this is a UI which sort of focuses on the your task, rather than looking at a complete GRC related naming conventions. This can be customized to suit the business user need, right? So in this example, this is a manager who is looking at different things that he needs to do in terms of his own task of reassessing the risk, or giving the rating to the risk and issues and so on and so forth. Additionally, if you notice on top, along with the task dashboard, he could also have the list of specific tasks that he needs to do, right? So on top you will have my task, or he can subscribe to the task which he is not directly going to undertake, but probably it's part of his team's deliverable. Similarly, for top management perspective, there may be oversight tasks, right? Just to sort of notice, or track if some of the things are pending for a long time, right? And then in these individual widgets, you'll notice that what are the things that are there for me. So what is the status on the risk assessment, and the risk in terms of the active risk or high residual risk, and all those different aspects of the risk. These risks, when they are associated with the issues, what are the open issues and action items that needs to be taken into account. And you also have the direct link to create a sort of loss event issues, or even do a risk assessment from the dashboard itself. Then look at the organizational view, for a specific geography or a business unit, and other information in terms of a loss event or a KRI that you might be interested in. Now, one of the things that we'll do here is we'll drill down into one of the risk assessment and see what is in store for us. So here we see the list of risk assessment with the different information on the status, and these can be iterative process, right? So you will also have the audit trail to see what is happening on those risk assessments. On top, you will also have the filters where you can probably just quickly select those risks which are not started, etc., at various points in time. And then one of the things that now we'll notice is, what does that risk assessment means? What are the risk associated with that? If there are any additional control that we need to understand, the KRIs, and how do you actually navigate through that? So basically, once I start drilling down into this assessment, I get a complete view of my risk assessment related to some of the other fields, right? So here you have the status, and you could also have identified some issues which are impacting this assessment. And later on during the demo, we'll see how you can create an issue and link that to various risks, etc., and take the action items as well. Now, all of these things are also encompassed within the workflow. So this action button that you see here, when I click on the action, you could have multiple choices depending upon where you stand in the workflow. So this could be a workflow for, let's say, risk assessment. This could be a workflow for, let's say, issue management, or loss event management. Any GRC objects can have a workflow designed around that, right? And we'll also see how we quickly create workflow within this tool itself, right? Now, some of the things that you'll notice is, apart from this, is what are those due dates. There is a guidance on how you are going to do the risk assessment. And if I scroll down, I notice that for this risk assessment, I have this particular risk that I'm going to sort of analyze further. It can be one or more process risk, again depending upon the process. One of the good way to analyze this further would be look at which areas it impacts, right? So this particular component here is impacting my operational risk management. It could also be IT risk and so on and so forth. Another way to look at it will be to use a tree diagram that is inbuilt as a part of the solution, right? So you can select any component and start drilling down. In this example, we are taking this risk assessment, and as you can see, this will have a child-parent relationship, so that it understand how do you start drilling down further. So we already saw that this risk AM001 is something that we were analyzing. What are the other aspects in terms of multiple evaluation of the risk, KRIs and controls, and I can select some of those details. For example, I would like to see what are those indicators. I can click on this KRI, and it gives me a detailed view about the key risk indicator that I'm interested in, right? So here I can sort of analyze that risk status in terms of typical red, amber, green, for that specific KRIs that I'm interested in. And I can take the further action directly from this, or I can just go back and do that as well, right? Or here, the other thing is around looking at the controls. So for this specific risk, what are the controls in terms of issue priority or the issue impact, and also the categorization, in terms of whether the design effectiveness exists for that control, or operating effectiveness is there, and I can give rating whether it is effective or not effective, so that I start my assessment, right? Now, this was a glimpse of how do you do the risk assessment, and we'll also look at details as to how easy it is to configure a workflow around that, right? So a workflow for risk assessment is really a collection of different stages and different actions. And as you can see here, this workflow can be across any GRC component, whether it is the issues, audits, or business impact analysis, various control that needs to exist, various RCSAs, and then it can also be triggered automatically, depending upon the case and the requirement, or it can be manually managed as well, right? So let's take one of the example here. We'll use risk assessment workflow. So let's assume that we are looking at the risk assessment workflow. So here, as you can see, these are all different stages that we are looking at. In this example, we are starting with the risk assessment for different functions, and there is a specific path as far as the IT risk assessment is concerned, and that's the reason it's denoted separately. So it follows a different path for IT risk assessment, and for the other risk, it is a different path, right? I can click on these individual buttons, which are stages, and notice the changes happening on the right hand side as well. Now let's take a look at one of those stages. So here we talk about a draft, sort of initial stage for this workflow, and you can define what type of workflow it is. It's start, end, or standard workflow. You can assign the due date. So for example, let's say if there is an issue, then you can assign that issue needs to be resolved within 7 days, or 8 days, or whatever timeline that you want to focus on. Along with that, you will also have these assignees and subscribers. If you remember in the initial workflow dashboard, I could set up a workflow for a specific process, and I can be assignee, direct assignee, or I can subscribe to the workflow that is, not directly as a part of my area of work, but probably my team's area, or I could also be overseeing that workflow, from a top management perspective. So I can add those assignees, who will be notified directly via an email and the link to the workflow activities that needs to be done. And then I can also look at what are the workflow options and views that I'm going to talk about, right? So here what happens is when you define a workflow, you can design that screen. So in the earlier screen, if you remember, we are talking about different aspects of assessment, etc. Right? So you can define those here as well. So this was around a stage within the workflow. We'll also look at, what are some of the other things that you can take care of, right? So for the individual user, you can include a guidance, sort of narrative as to what needs to be done for that workflow. We can take a look at, let's say, what happens when the stage change, right? So here we talk about the action. So that blue arrow that you see between two different stages, that's where you can again define the notification aspect, or different conditions that needs to be met before these status changes. So here, for example, we are saying that this particular stage is not meant for IT, and hence there is a condition that the risk within the scope is non-IT, right? And you can do that sort of condition as well. Additionally, you can have these validations and operations, when moving to the next stage as a part of the action properties. So here, for example, I have few operations which will make changes to the status as well as the validation, such as something not need not be empty, or etc., etc. Creating this workflow or modifying is also very simple. You can just drag and drop an action item, or a stage. So here, for example, I'll add a new stage called additional review. Depending upon the requirement, I'll fill in the other details, or I could just join two stages and see how one stage can be changed to another via the action items that I define. All those emails and validations and conditions I can configure as per my requirement. So this was something quick on the workflow. What we'll do is we'll now look at the cognitive aspect of it. So as you can see in the dashboard on the right bottom side, we have this start chat option. So this would be like a smart assistant where I can just ask for help. For example, what I'll do is I'll need to create an issue, and I'll see how I can just ask Watson assistant. It will direct me to a link which will help me create an issue, record that issue, and contribute from a GRC workflow perspective. So here I have a link to an issue that I want to create. And it's very easy. It's very easy, and for some of the business users who don't understand all the risk terminologies, they can just use Watson, ask questions, and contribute to the GRC working. So here, for example, I'll have the automatic, sequencing that I've defined. What I'll do is I'll probably fill in only those red asterisk items which are necessary to complete the issue details. But I'll also include some of the description. Now, one of the things that I can do here as a part of Watson capabilities is I can put some description, and the Watson engine can automatically identify what sort of controls are mapped to this issue. So I don't need to worry about those terminologies. There may be hundreds of controls that need to be in place. I can just mention the description, and as you can see, there could be some spelling mistake, but Watson will understand what is the context here. So here some of the other things I map in terms of what is the issue category, what risk domain it pertains to, and probably some of the actionables for people who are part of the issue management. So I assign it to one of the issue owner. I can put some due dates. Now, one of the things that I don't understand is, I don't know what sort of control this issue needs to have. So what I'll do is I'll select the business unit for this. So this business unit, let's say I'll select Abruca Limited, which is a legal entity here. And then if I scroll down, I notice that there are some suggestions, given by the Watson natural language classifier. So what it does, it looks at the, your description and matches that with the control that are in place, right? So here you can see the equipment maintenance that I had given as the description is matched with 97% confidence score. So I can now use this this mapping that is suggested, and this is already mapped to my issue. I can also select a certain additional controls, and if that is required, then I can add those controls. So net it uses both the human intelligence as well as something that an AI can suggest and improve the quality from a GRC application, GRC data perspective as well. So the wrong classification, etc., that will not happen. Now, as you can see, I have my issue ready, and then I can go along, be part of the process for workflow. Somebody will, actually take action upon this, and it will be the next thing that I need to do. So this is something that we saw as a part of the Watson embedded. Let's look at some of the easy things. For example, loading data from Excel. Now, while we have the capability to connect to your source system, a lot of times this GRC's data is lying around the Excel files. So we have this fast map utility which you can leverage. What it does is you can have this columnar data. For example, here we had selected those couple of test issues which were there on my machine. So I just use that file, Excel file, and then I'll start importing this data as a fast map import process as the process kicks off. So the process also has some checks and validations and warning if there are some existing fields that cannot be modified. It prevents that, and you can import the data. So here you can see the import data is successful, and I have two new issues, which are created in the system now, right? So if I now just close that and let me just refresh the page, you will notice that, those two issues that I had created are now part of the GRC solution. So the test 43 and test 44 are already appearing there. As a part of the next step, what I'll do is I'll select one of these issue and probably include some of the other details that I need, or I could have very well taken this as a part of my Excel upload itself. Now lastly, let's look at some of the data visualization. So we are using Cognos analytics capabilities. So it's not just about reporting and dashboarding. We are leveraging the built-in AI capabilities within the solution to explore the data. So let's take a look at some of the risk events as a source. Again, right now we are looking at an Excel file, but this could be your entire GRC data connected to OpenPages. So when I select, let's say, one of the indicators to analyze the relationship between different data elements and the risk element, it gives me these details, in terms of what is the strength of that particular data sets to predict the net loss, right? And I can select from the visualization, or I could just ask Watson, Cognos Analytics assistant to quickly create a dashboard for me. So I just say create a dashboard looking at the data. It takes the relevant data sets and creates a dashboard for me. As you can see, there are multiple tabs for the analysis of amount in absolute terms and in percentage terms. And you also have some of the other details in terms of status. Again, this is categorized in terms of when the occurrence started, and the discovery of the recovery amount, region color coding, and also some sort of forecast built in. As you can see, this small icon, graph icon, I can click, and based on the time series data that I have, the solution can quickly take a look at the historical data and do a prediction for me. So here I enable the forecast as an option, and I can see for 2019, 2020, and 2021, I have my forecast data readily available as well, right? So this is something that I was showing as a part of exploratory capabilities. Obviously, pre-built, GRC heat maps, dashboard report can be made available, pre-configured on your mobile and your devices, or it could be sent automatically to the concerned users as well. So this was just to give a view about different visual capabilities that are available within the GRC solution itself. It uses the best of the Cognos Analytics. Just to kind of summarize what we saw as a demo, we started with an overview of a risk assessment. We looked at how the workflow can be configured very easily. We looked at how the cognitive assistant can help a business user navigate through the application, or map the controls aspect directly based on just an English description that is provided. We saw how easily the data can be loaded directly from the Excel file. But yes, we also have the ability to use API to connect directly to the source system. And last we looked at the data visualization. So with this, I conclude a brief demo. There are a lot of capabilities in terms of, document management, because sometimes you need to attach a document as a proof when you do risk evaluation, and you can typically have a questionnaire and things like that. It was not possible to show all those things. We can probably touch base with you as a one-on-one interaction for that. So what I'll do is, let me switch back to uh, my deck, and team, if there are any questions, we are happy to take those questions. So if you could start the enable the Q&A panel, that would be
Yeah.
great.
So thanks, Atul, first of all, for that wonderful presentation. So we are now ready for the Q&A session. But just a quick reminder before we take the audience questions, we will have a feedback survey at the end of this webinar. A form will open in your web browser after the webinar, and so please make sure you participate in the same. So let's see what questions do we have from the audience. And by the way, if you haven't sent your questions already, now is the time. Please send them across so that the IBM team can address them. So, okay, we have a first question here. Jitendra Sharma is asking, is there a is there any module for exemption management?
Yeah, so yeah, as a capability, you could always, let's say, there is a need to give certain exception for some policies or some risk that need to be also, assessed. As a general mechanism of workflow, you can define that as a special category of object, and you can work on the exception management. So yes, the answer is yes, you can do that. It's available as a general feature across all the modules.
All right. So we have our next question here. Shashank Helkar is asking, will this tool be used to check third-party compliance? I think he is asking, can this tool be used to check third-party compliance?
Yes, and we also have some of the standard best practices framework that can be adapted from an IT compliance perspective, whether it is ISO or a different framework that you might be interested in. We can include that as a part of the governance.
All right. So we have our next question. The data required for managing GRC aspect is often a challenge. So how do you address that?
Correct. And, as I said, this was a very quick demo. I was not able to show all the things. So we have the, GRC calculation as a capability. If the data is not readily available, you need to calculate those, risk indicators or KPIs within the solution, and then map it to functions and departments and get a holistic view. We can do that. So with our inbuilt capability, we can, connect to your data sources. Based on the requirement, we can calculate those risk indicators and present that as a part of both. I mean, workflow for making modifications or enhancement to that, or the management quick overview of the risk dashboard.
Okay. So our next question is, when an issue or incident take place, can we alter the rating of the controls like an I failed etc.
Correct. So as I said, this is completely configurable. We have certain objects which are available across the module. Like, if you look at any incidents, that incidents can be categorized and, linked to an issue, or for that issue, you will have the action items. And then once you work upon the action items, the risk rating will change, and so on and so forth for the control and risk assessment. So if you have any specific need around how would you react to an issue, and go back and make changes to your risk assessment, or come out with a re-rating of some of those risk controls, that's quite possible. I mean, this is all the beauty of the embedded workflow capabilities we have. We can do all of that.
All right. So we have a next question here. We do not have a pool of GRC experts in our organization. How can you help us with that?
Great question. So as I said, you don't really need to have those experts available in the organization. When we implement this solution, our team who comes with a lot of expertise on having implemented the OpenPages solution across various industries and customers can guide you on that. And you can actually take baby steps. So you can probably take some of the priority item, put the risk framework around that, having the risk control, risk assessment, and the control framework, and then you can when you are ready, you can adopt the best practices. So our team can help you if you do, even if you don't have the GRC expertise within the organization.
All right. So Ms. Sharmila is asking, does this make new privacy guidelines for organizations, especially those organizations that have presence all over?
Yeah, in fact, this is one of the leading global GRC solution that is used across different geographies, and we have a lot of international clients across various industries, be it BFSI or manufacturing or telecom, across various sectors. And as a solution, as the solution demands, it needs to follow the frameworks in those specific countries, geographies, or the industry mandates. So whatever is the need of an R, from the GRC control perspective, we can work on that. As I said briefly, we also have so let's say if we take a case of regulatory changes, how to quickly adapt to regulatory changes. We also have a tie-up with some of the content providers like Thomson Reuters, uh, who can provide the feed that goes into OpenPages. So let's say there is a specific law with respect to a specific industry. If there are any changes, the interpretation of what areas it kind of impacts is available as a feed within OpenPages. So you save a lot of time trying to interpret and then put those controls in place. As well as I said earlier, if there are some of those standards and best practices framework that you want to adopt, we can work on that as well.
All right. So I think in the interest of time, we can take just one last question here. Uh, so, okay, we have, yeah. So how is the GRC, like, how is your product different from other GRC solutions in the market?
Correct. And this is a common question we get a lot of times, and we'll see that many of our competitors, they focus only on the automation, right? And they would have some basic workflow capabilities. At the end of the day, it all depends on how do you actually want to leverage this. And then if you don't have the data, if you don't have those frameworks in place or best practices in place, then the implementation of these GRC solution would always be a challenge. And that's what we've tried to address with our differentiators in terms of giving the ability for a business user to start collaborating, right? So even if I don't know anything about ABC of GRC, I have some observation. I can actually be part of the workflow, use the cognitive abilities, and that is something which is a differentiator for me in terms of mapping that to a GRC framework. Secondly, this also comes built in with the best of the advanced analytics that is available with Cognos Analytics. So you just not only just have a standard reporting and dashboarding framework, but you could also do some advanced analytics, trying to understand the sort of relation between different key risk indicators, do some sort of forecasting that is inbuilt within the solution, etc. And yes, I mean this adapts to all the different typical business requirement, whether it is IT GRC or operational risk management or internal audit or third party vendor assessment. So a lot of our competitors have strength in one or two areas, but they don't really have this comprehensive ability that we just saw in the presentation today. And we are happy to talk more on that as a one-on-one interaction.
All right, so that's all the time we have for today. I thank Pradeep and Atul once again for sharing their wonderful insights. I'm sure there have been many takeaways for the audience as well. Also, thank the audience for your interest and time and participating in this webinar. Just a quick reminder again, don't forget to send in your responses in the survey form that will open in your web browser after the webinar ends. Thank you, everyone. So have a great day ahead.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody.